Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Yukas. Thanks so much for joining us. A rally held by far-right groups is underway in Portland, Oregon. Police are bracing for violence as previous protests between the groups and counter-protesters have led to fights. Now, so far, as you see here in this picture, things do seem to be pretty peaceful right now. A lot of people just walking around, as you see right there. CBS News national correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti is at the protest in Portland, Oregon. He joins us now by phone. Jonathan, we were talking just a short time ago. So far, things have been pretty peaceful today, just people talking.
Yeah, that's correct. Hey, Jamie, it's been peaceful. That is the headline so far. Of course, police here on guard in case that changes. We're here at the waterfront park here in Portland, where this protest started around 9:30. It was advertised at beginning on Facebook around 11 o'clock, and we're certainly starting to see more and more people kind of file in. The far left is definitely showing more people here as we speak than the far right groups that are gathered here. We're kind of in this neutral territory in the park where there is nobody. There is a divide of land. On one side are the far left protesters. On the other side, the far right protesters. Police had hoped that would be how this protest would go the entire day, of course. Their big concern as this day carries on and as more people show up are these two groups merging together and the confrontations that could come from that. For the most part, everybody that I've been speaking with, people in Portland, they are no strangers to these kind of protests. And they often describe protesters on both sides as being relatively peaceful, but they do say that there are bad actors in all these protests that do know how to ignite this tinderbox, and that's the concern from police.
Well, that's whenever
you see them gathering around.
Right. Whenever you get two groups of people that are on completely opposite sides of issues, you can obviously have problems. We're looking at a picture right now, Jonathan. It looks like a number of people have gathered with cameras and cell phone cameras and that kind of thing, taping something. Do you see that from your vantage point or know what's going on there?
Yeah, we do. And as we're speaking, actually, we're starting to see some members of the far left marching towards members of the far right. Just a moment ago, I was saying this is what police were afraid of, and it is what's unfolding right now. There are a lot of cameras, people here filming every single second of this, trying to document it all. Around them, a lot of police. I'm guessing there's probably about, in total from both sides, 200 protesters. There are at least 1,000 police officers with the Portland Police Department. All of them are working today, and they're joined by other federal law enforcement and trying to make sure that they could keep the peace here. All of this as we're talking, and we're walking closer to this group as they're merging right now.
It sounds like there's a lot of shouting, too, at this point.
Yeah, a war of words. It's words right now. The concern is if things escalate and violence breaks out. Again, that's happened in the past. And that is what police are very concerned about happening right now. And actually, as we're talking, this really is the moment police were afraid of. And, in the next few minutes, we'll see if this diffuses or if this grows. And the police right now, you could probably hear a little bit of an echo from police on loudspeakers right now, announcing some road closures, but also trying to make their presence known here to these protesters. The message being, eyes are on everyone here.
Well, that's, Jonathan, we had the president a little bit earlier today tweeting about Antifa and calling them, saying he was going to declare them a terrorist organization. When you've gone around and talked to people, are people talking about that there?
Yeah, I saw that tweet, and just to give background, the police department yesterday in their press conference made a very specific point in saying how they're remaining neutral and how it's important for everyone to remain neutral, not to take sides and further fan these flames. I spoke with somebody on the far left. We were making our way over to the far right as we got on the phone with you. And the far left, dubbed Antifa here, says that this puts a target right on their backs. In calling them out, they say they feel like the president essentially is taking sides with the alt-right. So you can imagine words like that from the president of the United States and not helping diffuse the situation here. In many ways, it has angered a lot of people, as you can imagine, gathering here. And also, as we anticipate when we go and speak with a few people on the far right, perhaps even empowering why they're here showing up.
Okay, well, we're gonna leave it here for now, Jonathan. We want you to stay safe out there. We're going to continue to watch the pictures coming in and check in with you in just a little while to see if there's any update. Thank you so much. Earlier, I spoke with Shane Kavanaugh of the Oregonian about the history of these right-wing protests in Portland, Oregon. Can you give us a little bit of context here? When did the far right first find a home in Portland? It seems like it's found a home and is staying.
Well, I think it's sort of important to recognize that it's not necessarily that the far right has found a home in Portland, but that a number of right-wing groups and organizations have repeatedly come to Portland, Oregon, to promote a set of views and ideas that they think are important, but also to confront a number of the left-wing groups that have sort of consistently stood up against right-wing groups, both in Portland and around the country.
The main organizer of this rally is the so-called Proud Boys. Can you explain to our viewers who they are?
Yeah, so the Proud Boys, it's kind of tricky how to best describe them, but they describe themselves as sort of a right-wing fraternal organization. They've considered themselves, quote-unquote, Western chauvinists. It's a national group that was started by a guy named Gavin McInnes, who is one of the founding members of Vice News and Vice Magazine, and is also a prominent conservative activist and media personality. Members of the Proud Boys, some of them have expressed, explicitly stated that they're intolerant toward Islam, feminism, liberal politics, and they are also proud supporters of President Donald Trump and have often served as sort of people on the ground to confront those who are opposed to President Trump and his politics on the ground in cities across the U.S.
Well, that's, as you said, people travel to Portland now, it seems, on both sides to kind of fight this out. The left-wing group, Antifa, has been a favorite target of the president. He actually tweeted a little bit earlier threatening to designate Antifa a terrorist organization ahead of these protests. Portland's being watched very closely, he says. Hopefully the mayor, who's a Democrat, will be able to properly do his job. What is their role, Antifa's role, in the rally today?
Well, first, I think it's really important to recognize that there is no actual organization or entity known as Antifa. Antifa, anti-fascist activists, are a loosely sort of organized group of individuals that come together to confront what they consider to be fascist players or activists that demonstrate or show up in places around the country. Now, there are sort of umbrella organizations that have supported these types of this type of activism. One of them is Rose City Antifa, which is actually one of the oldest and largest anti-fascist movements in the country, and it started here in Portland back in 2007. So this long predates President Trump's election, and it's primarily focused on direct action against individuals who promote racist, bigoted, or hateful views.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Last year, your paper reported that the Southern Poverty Law Center lists a disproportionate number of hate groups in the state of Oregon relative to its population. What about the history of the state, in your opinion, makes it a breeding ground for hate groups, so it seems?
Well, so it's both Oregon, but also the Pacific Northwest in general have long been a hotbed for far-right militia groups, white supremacist groups. I mean, a lot of people now recognize that that Oregon itself, in its own constitution, when it was founded as a state, at first explicitly barred African Americans or black people from coming to the state, even though it wasn't a slave state or anything like that. And I mean, there's been a long legacy of racism and discrimination in the state. That sort of plays into the current political moment, but also a number of white supremacist and far-right groups have taken root both in Oregon and Washington and Idaho and even parts of Northern California, and they've been around for decades.
Have previous right-wing organizers faced charges for organizing these rallies that you've seen?
Well, so for the last 3 years, there have been a number of right-wing groups and activists that have come into Portland to hold rallies and marches and things of that such. And there have been numerous sort of clashes between them and counter-protesters. And up until just recently, this last week, we've seen more arrests of members of conservative or right-wing groups that have been involved in these demonstrations demonstrations in Portland for years, a number of those individuals have finally started getting arrested and are facing a number of criminal charges.
You know, it's okay for people to protest, use free speech, but what are police and the local and state governments doing to cut down on these protests that often become violent? And that's kind of the line that we need to watch and is often crossed.
Well, I mean, part of the issue is that there's only so much that the police can do. They've tried a number of different tactics here in Portland where they've been a lot more aggressive to try to target those who they believe are committing violent or criminal activities. But they've also, a number of times during demonstrations, have taken a more hands-off approach that people on both sides have sort of blamed the Portland police for allowing a number of these violent skirmishes to erupt between right-wing groups and counter-protesters.
Shane Kavanaugh, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.